Hello and welcome to YouTube Developers Live. We have an exciting show for you today. In the studio, I have Jeremy Walker.
Hello.
How are you doing, Jeremy?
I'm doing well.
Long time no see, man.
I know.
And I am very happy to tell you that we have exciting guests coming from afar today. We have Tim Wintle.
Hi.
How are you doing, Tim?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks.
Where are you visiting us from?
I've flown in from the UK.
All right. And Matias Molinas.
Hi.
How are you doing, Matias?
Fine.
And where are you from?
From Argentina, from Latin America.
All right. So this is going to be an exciting show. What we wanted to cover is tell you a little bit about our Google Developer Expert program, and then chat with Tim and Matias about their experience with YouTube APIs, as well as tell us a little bit more about the community in the UK and Argentina, respectively. So let's get into it. Some of you might have heard about our Google Developers Expert program, and I'm very proud to announce that we have 2 developer experts right now for YouTube APIs. We're looking for more, so if you're excited about YouTube API, please get in touch. And why don't we start with you, Tim? So Tim, you mentioned you were from the UK, right?
Yeah.
And how did you get started with YouTube APIs?
So we initially, I needed to collect data about kind of how much videos had been viewed and all kind of information around it. And we kind of looked at scraping YouTube, which quickly we discovered the terms of service kind of say you can't do that. And so eventually we found the APIs and I started looking at that, and then I just found the groups and ended up posting quite a lot on there.
And was that a side project or was it a work project?
It was actually a research project. We'd got funding. It was kind of working with the same company I work at now. Well, in fact, it's developed into that company.
What do you do for work?
So I work at an ad network called the Viral Ad Network in the UK. We have a lot of kind of YouTube content that we put out through our ad network, and we kind of track engagement with that and use the player API a lot to make sure that we know what's going on, and we do some custom builds for ads and things like that.
Cool. How about you, Matias? What got you into YouTube
Well,
APIs?
I am GDG organizer too, so I begin to make some sessions about the YouTube APIs, and I have my company too, and I begin to work in my own product that I use YouTube API v3 in experimental way, and I made 2 open source projects, and I try to provide session and different kind of articles and projects in my region. So this is the way that in that I begin to use the API.
And you mentioned you also involved in the Google Developers group community. Which city?
In Santa Fe, in Argentina. We have several GDC groups in Argentina and in all South America. Well, I work with the GDCs from the another cities and another countries from Latin America. And well, I made sessions in Santa Fe or via Hangout in another cities or in another countries, and I talk about the YouTube API.
Great. So. And Tim, back to you. Where in UK do you live?
So I actually live in the northwest now. When I first started working with YouTube, I was living in the southwest. So I've kind of moved about. I think there is a local Google developer group. It used to be a GTUG, but I've not managed to make it there, and it's not quite made it across to the UK, or it's not become big like it is in the US.
Okay, great. Well, we'll fix that. So, a couple of questions about your personal preferences, if I may. So, what's your favorite programming language?
I work in Python a lot. I like dynamic languages. So, yeah, I use a lot of Python and C and JavaScript. C is obviously the one that stands out.
Yeah, I rarely see Python and C and dynamic languages in the same sentence, but
you can do object-oriented C. You just need to have standards.
And I guess in Python it's pretty common to build libraries and then wrap them in Python code, right?
and just optimize the kind of just the loops that really need to be optimized instead of writing the whole thing in C++ or. Yeah.
And are you a client library guy, or do you prefer use REST APIs directly?
So since if you've been following the YouTube APIs, it's kind of all gone to OAuth 2. Since OAuth 2 came out, I've started using the client libraries because you kind of have to. It's very difficult not to. But before that, I was making the REST requests myself and doing auth and stuff.
With client login?
Sometimes, yeah. Which you shouldn't use now, as you've been posting a lot.
Definitely, auth 2 is the way to go.
But there's a few ways that aren't quite documented. If you look at some of the demo apps that have come out for the V3 API, they get around some of the automatic spec for the library that gets downloaded, and they make you put in the endpoint URL, and it just handles the auth for you, and then you can manage this at a slightly lower level.
I see.
And that's really useful if you need to kind of wrap all of your HTTP requests if you're doing offline stuff or that kind of stuff.
Sounds like an interesting blog post article for those that are resisting client libraries and yet they don't want to deal with auth.
Yeah.
Cool. And how about you, Matias? What's your favorite programming language?
I like Java, JavaScript, and maybe C# too. But this is my core set of language.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Very good set for server side and client side development. And what about client libraries? Do you like them, or you prefer to parse
I prefer
JSON
to
and
do
XML?
the calls directly and parse the result. So I have more control in this way.
Yeah.
And I like have control.
Oh, I see. Interesting. Okay. Well, we are learning a lot about your character during this interview. All right. So real men use REST directly, right?
Yes.
Cool. So I know Jeremy wanted to ask you a few questions about some of the new APIs. So Jeremy, over to you.
Yeah, great. So of course, I usually like to focus on the three main APIs, the player, and a couple new ones that we have that I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about. So the first one would be the data API, or version 3. So for you that don't know, we've had an experimental stage for this API, and it's kind of a complete rewrite of version 2, and there's a lot of new features we've added, and it's all JSON based, and it's much more, you just get what you need, so it's a lot more lighter and a lot more efficient. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about that to see if you've used it a little bit, and tell us about what you've done.
I used this new API, and I like the integration with the Freebase and the possibility that you can search videos using Freebase topics, because I think that is a very powerful feature. It's a key feature if you want to make, for example, recommendation system. You can access the different playlists from the user, and you can retrieve the different Freebase topics that related to the videos that the user like, or maybe the favorite videos, or maybe the videos that the user want to watch later. So you can take a very good source of, you have a very good source for recommendations. I think that the Topic Explorer sample is a very good application to begin to use this API. In fact, I use this project to learn the YouTube API v3, and I recommend to all the people to use and to test this application.
We will we'll tell our colleague Jeffrey Posnick that you like it.
Yes, I like this application.
And that actually uses that method that I was saying. I think it is documented under the general GAPI API, that you can just make these requests outside of the main flow.
Yeah, and for those out there, the Topics API lets you do semantic search, and it's based on Freebase, like you were talking about, and that's one of the big features. It's just a way that you can search terms that may have multiple meanings and get the exact version. We have a talk on it, so be sure to check that out. So I'm assuming then you didn't use from what you were saying earlier, you didn't use the Java client library. Then
yes, but I used the AngularJS and JavaScript to test the API, because I discovered AngularJS with the Topic Explorer, and I liked AngularJS, and I like JavaScript, so I used the YouTube API v3 with JavaScript.
So was there anything that you ran into that kind of surprised you at all about using the API, like that you weren't expecting?
No, I think that another thing that I like is that the API, you can use the API in the same way that you use another APIs from Google. For example, I use the prediction API too, and I use the same libraries and the same clients and the same authorization system. So I believe this is that I like from the YouTube API v3.
Yeah, building it on the same architecture as a lot of the other ones, it makes it easy to switch between them if you need to pick up some extra APIs to use with your product. So yeah, I totally agree with that one.
And you can use the same tools. You can use the API Explorer to test the different calls, and it's very productive. If you are a developer, you don't need to learn a lot of tools or a lot of client libraries.
Yeah, the API Explorer is a big thing for me too. For those that don't know, it's right below our docs. We have this little like interactive thing where you can kind of fill out forms of what you kind of want, and it puts together dynamically the request that goes out, the RESTful request, the HTTP request that goes out to our system, and then it shows the response down below, so you can start editing stuff directly. And I'm sure that's really useful, especially if you're not necessarily using the client libraries, because then you can see exactly what you're looking for and make sure it's right before you even try starting to integrate it into your app. Great. Well, let's talk a little bit about the player and the analytics API, because I know you use that quite a bit.
Yeah.
So why don't we start with the player API, because and for you out there, that's just a way to play back videos off YouTube. I'm assuming you use the iframe embed.
I use most of the player APIs. So there's an old style JavaScript API. There's two Flash APIs, although is one of them
AS2, AS3.
AS2 is AS2
is deprecated.
Okay.
Yeah, but still there.
And there's the iframe API, which allows HTML5 playback on mobile, which is particularly useful. Which is now a full. It's not experimental anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of switch between them depending on what I need to do, and I try to avoid Flash, but sometimes you've got a big Flash movie and you need a video in there.
I'm suspecting a lot with ads. You have some ads that you construct, and like you're saying, you're using the AS3 probably player within those ads, so you need to have access to that.
So actually, a lot of our stuff is pulling off the kind of events that come back from them, and luckily they're all fairly similar in what events they give. They throw it in slightly different ways. So like the iframe API looked more like a DOM event that's bubbling compared to the ActionScript APIs. But yeah, so that's the kind of main stuff we use. We try not to use the play video method and stuff like that, because people don't realize that normally doesn't count as a view on YouTube, and
the playback has to be user initiated in order to count.
Yeah, that's something I think a lot of people don't realize when they first start looking at it.
That's true.
But
that's a good point.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's really good to see that kind of people can't abuse the API in that way.
Was there anything that I guess surprised you when you're using the player APIs, or is it pretty straightforward?
So once you've got the skeleton code there, it's fairly easy. I think it's more inheritance in JavaScript that there are kind of several different callbacks. So there's a callback once the script has been inserted for the iframe API, and then there's another callback once the player has been instantiated. And like I see a lot of confusion coming from kind of if someone else is reading my code and they're not used to the APIs, there's kind of like at what point is this a player instance and at what point is this a global setting. But once you've got that kind of done, it just works, and it's really good, especially now that there's kind of mobile support and you can actually play videos on mobile using this API in the same way you would on any other platform.
I think the API lifecycle in a very asynchronous system is always a challenge.
Yeah.
But I think the team has kind of evolved it over the years to what it is
the other thing that they made quite a kind of clean cut decision when they made the iframe API into not supporting any browsers that don't have the post message API, which is part of HTML5, which kind of means that IE8 in Quirks mode doesn't work, and anything below that works. I think IE8 in standards mode should work rather than IE9.
Do you find that is an issue for your clients?
So I've actually had I have a kind of general wrapper that I insert that detects if there's post message, and if there is, it uses the iframe embed, and if there's not, then it drops in the old JavaScript API to the Flash.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think the motivation there was really with the proliferation of mobile devices. This is where we needed something that would work across different platforms, and that is a very good interface to use for some of the mobile platforms as well.
It's a very clean API, and it's it'll be a lot of people aren't supporting IE8 now, and by this time next year, I think I'll have removed all of the code that kind of deals with if you haven't got it. So I'm very glad that it was kind of a clean cut and not trying to support everything indefinitely.
So sometimes inflicting a little bit of pain pays off in the long term.
Great. Well, I mean, I also you use the Insight, which for you that you don't know, Insight is the it's part of version 2, so the older data API that lets you pull analytics information. And we have a new analytics API that is in experimental mode right now that we're a lot of people are playing with. So I was going to ask you just a quick overview, what you thought of that, and if you've seen any benefits to all the data you're pulling now with Insight.
So the biggest thing is that the old Insight API just kind of gave you what's a tarball or a zip file with a big CSV with columns, and the columns used to change as more data was added, and you had to kind of download this, store it all in RAM, extract it, and it was messy. So one of the biggest things is that you don't need to do that anymore. It's more like a kind of query language. It's a really clean kind of service orientated query that you can just make as though you're querying a database, and you can also query right back. So you're not kind of limited to just the last, I think it was 14 days, it could have been 30 days that you could query before. You can actually get loads of data going back. Plus there's all of the new stuff like average view length, and I'm hoping that it's going to be expanding more and more before.
Yeah, I think metrics is what you're referring to, and definitely we are always pushing the team with Jeremy to expose more of these metrics, and I think they've done a good job catching up with what we have available on youtube.com, and that's really the goal, is to expose as much as we can through the new API as opposed to the Insight API. So I think for folks that are still using Insight, I think we really would like them to switch to the new analytics API.
It's a lot.
And this is something that I know Jeremy has been working a lot on, trying to help people and work with the team.
Yeah.
So that we can actually unplug inside at some point.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you're getting JSON or CSV directly back, and you get to specify only the parts you want, not this massive zip file with all these CSVs that you have to kind of wade through to find the right stuff.
Yeah, like if you're on kind of a cloud provider or a VPN or something, and your bandwidth is quite kind of restricted by the data that you're getting in, then being able to really compress the responses is really good as well. And luckily with YouTube hosting a lot of, or so many videos for people, you're actually in a point where you are worrying about this kind of response size instead of the size of a video file that you would have hosted 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, great.
All right, so I think this is all the time we have today. Thank you very much for visiting us. Enjoy the rest of your trip here in Northern California, and we will hopefully see you soon again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.